this final project is a little bit bigger in scope than what you've done before, right? And I've done that on purpose. I've been slowly ramping the assignments up. Hopefully you've noticed that, okay? I'm doing it on purpose. But a large part of that is now this one especially is bigger, not just in its length and the number of clips you're going to have, but also the scope of the story is a little bit bigger, right? I mean, you're attempting to tell a story that's a little bit more complicated. That's why I made it be a non-linear timeline. Sometimes editing that can get a little daunting. Now 3-5 minutes, not so bad, it's not horrible. I've edited videos that are, an hour, hour and a half. Lots of clips, and it can get a little bit daunting. So what I want you to, what I'm going to show you today, what I want you to learn is a very easy technique. It's really simple, and some of you are going to see this and you go, oh, and then you're like, yes, of taking your editing and just doing it in chunks, okay? It's really cool. So I've got a bunch of clips here. Now they actually have nothing to do with each other in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so just make that known right away. But let's just say I'm doing my video here, and this is the non-linear sequence film. Okay, you might not know where you're going to start placing things. You might not know, do I want this part here or do I want it here? Like, you can play with the time. Well, in order to do that, up till now, you would have to you'd have to have like groups of clips, and you'd have to move them around the timeline. Well, I'm going to show you something easier, and it's really simple: sequences within sequences. It's actually really cool. You can drag sequences into a master sequence. So watch. Just do this real fast. You'll get the idea. So I've got sequence 1, and I'm just going to take a couple of these clips, and I've got them. I'm just going to do okay. In, out, drag it down. Okay, so there I've got a clip. That's easy. And then we've got another clip here, right? In, out. Okay, so I'm building a sequence. And this is my he's reading a book sequence, right? Makes perfect sense. Pretty simple. Just find another one. Okay, there's a dolly shot, not a very particularly nice dolly shot, but it's a dolly shot anyway. Okay, so now I've edited a sequence here. Now what I'm going to do is, let's say I move on to the next scene. So here he gets up and we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe next I have a flashback. So the idea of the story here is, and you guys remember this, okay? He's reading a book, and somebody knocks on the door, and he looks up. And maybe as he looks up and gets up from his chair, right there we cut, and I'm going to go to a sequence that happened in the past, let's just say. Now, I could start to bring those clips down. They're in this folder here. I could start to bring those clips down, okay? Okay, these are the rolling shots that we were doing here that didn't work first off because the lighting was not dark enough, okay? Well, let's say that's our flashback. Now I could just start dragging them down into here and just continue with my story. Or I can make a new sequence. So you can go over here to your bin and you right click and you create a new sequence. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to name these. I'm going to start naming them, and I'm going to do so in an intelligent manner. Not that I want to say that you would be stupid, but I want to do it so that I can know where they are. So what I'll do is like in an approximate order. So I'll call it sequence 1, and then I'll say reading book. And then maybe I'll call this one flashback 1. And then I'll say rolling tube, okay? That I know what it is, okay? Now, you'll like this. So now I've got this. I'm going to double click on flashback 1, rolling tube, and now I'll just edit some of my shots here. So we've got he's looking at the tube, it rolls away. Okay, so drop that down in my sequence. Yes, I want it to match my settings. Okay, let's find another clip. Here we go. Let's see. No, that wasn't. So then we have our tube rolling away with our magic wand, our blue screen magic wand stick. So we'll start about there. And then my feet get in the way, so we'll cut it there. So now I'm building my flashback sequence, right? And this makes a lot of sense, right? This is our first shot, really. So here, to there, bring that down and push everything over. There's our first shot. So now we've got this flashback sequence. See? Now, let's say I've finished this scene. I've got it. Now I can start playing with the order. So here's where I go and I make a third sequence. New sequence. And I'm going to call this, whatever you want to call it, final sequence, master sequence, whatever you want to call it. But this is the whole shebang. So now if I take a look at that, I can double click on my final sequence. Now I've got nothing in there, right? Watch this. Take my reading book sequence and drag it down into the timeline. Yes, I want to match it. Then I want to take my flashback sequence and go in and drop it in. Now I've got all my footage. But then let's say all of a sudden I realize, you know what, I want my flashback first. Okay, fine. Just flip them around. And now I've got my flashback first. I don't have to go back and re-edit my sequence. I don't have to go highlighting large groups of clips. I don't have to do that. Now, let's just say I go back to my rolling tube sequence, double click on it, and here it is, and I add a clip. Okay? This motion clip. And I drag that down. Okay? To maybe right here. Okay, so I've got that in there. Now that changes things. Let's highlight and render really quickly. Yeah. Takes a second. I'm rendering it here so that it's set in the final sequence. But now watch what happens to the final sequence. So it should happen to the final sequence is it's just going to lengthen it. It's really kind of cool. So now, all of a sudden, take a look. Sequence number 1 just got a lot longer, automatically. I didn't have to move anything over. Whoops, something is wrong. It's not showing the motion clip. I don't know why that is, but it's not a big deal. Because you know that it's there. And it's now pushed everything over, and now I've got a new final sequence without having to do a ton of work, without having to move 100 different clips. Because you edit each scene in a separate sequence, and then you throw them all into a final sequence, so it's sequences within sequences. Woo, pretty complicated? Yes, but it does make your life a little easier if you work this way, especially when you're dealing with something where you might decide to have a scene one place and then all of a sudden you go, no, I want to move that whole scene. I want to move that whole thing over here. Well, now it becomes really easy to do that if each scene is a separate sequence. The other thing that I recommend doing just to help keep yourself organized is take all your sequences and put them in a folder. Okay? So you'll see how my clips are in a folder here, right? Okay? That makes sense. Right click, and I'm going to make it's a bin. I'm going to make a new bin. Okay? See that? New bin. Boom. And I'm just going to call this sequences. Like that. And then I'm just going to highlight these 3 and just throw them in there. And then I can have that open or have it closed. And then all my sequences are together. The reason why you want to do that is especially if you're naming them, right? You might find that final sequence would be up here in the clips, and then sequence 1 will be down here, and then flashbacks will be back up here. And your sequences can get really mingled in with the clips if you're not careful. So one of the things that I always do when I've got a big project is I make a series of bins. and I'll call one video clips, like this, and I drag all my video clips into there, even if it's in multiple folders, and I can just, do that. And then I'll make another bin, and I call it audio, or music specifically. I'll call it music specifically. And then I'll have another bin that I call sound effects, okay? And then I have another bin that I call motion files. So any motion files that I make, special effects, anything like that, I'll put in a bin there. Now I'm organized. And when you've got, I don't know, 100 clips, plus motion files and sound effects and all that sort of stuff, it can get really confusing very quickly. You can start losing files. It gets very frustrating. So being organized with these bins and making sure that they're separating things can really be huge. And then editing each scene in a separate sequence can also be huge. Now, let's just say you go, that's great, Weisbrod, but I already started this film, and I've got 2 scenes in one sequence already. That's fine. Here's what you can do. Take the scene that you've already edited, and you duplicate it. So you right-click, duplicate. You got sequence 1 and sequence 1 copy. And then what I'll do is I'll double-click on it, and I'll call it sequence 1, and I'll make this the second set. So I'll call sequence reading book, and then I'll call it second shots or second time or whatever. Shots. There we go. Then what I'll do is I've got reading book here, and I've got reading book second. Then I'll take the last 2 frame, or the first 2 frames, and I'll delete them. Okay, move these over. Then I go back to the first one, and I delete the last 2 frames. Now I've got 2 different sequences, half the scene in one, half the scene in the other, if that's what I wanted to do, and now I'm able to work with them separately. Does that make sense? That's the easiest way. You can also highlight a bunch of clips and copy and paste them too. It's actually really pretty simple to copy. So if you already started to work on this and you want to separate them in the scenes, but you've got 2 scenes in one sequence, that's the, I think, the safest thing. Duplicate the sequence, rename it, then you go in and one, you delete one set of shots, and then in the other, you delete the other set of shots, and now you've got 2 different sequences with the 2 different scenes in them, and you're good to go. If that makes any sense. Okay? Use this if you want to. It's not compulsory. You don't have to. But trust me, it'll make your life a lot easier. Sequences within sequences. Any questions? Okay.